Hi and welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining me. So today's video I've been holding off for a while, but it's all about this. So relaxing with the Miles Davis Quintet. Now, I recently did a video on working with a Miles Davis Quintet, which I shall put a link to up just here. Please check that out if you like, where I kind of explain how these came about. And there's mainly 4 albums in this kind of series, and they came about by the fact that in '51, I think it was, Miles signed with Prestige, and then in '55, after his Newport jazz festival performance, he caught the attention of Columbia, and they offered him a contract, and various contractual negotiations went ahead, and basically Miles moved to Columbia. Columbia bought out his contract, but there were various things that went on, and existing agreements had to be fulfilled. So, cut a long story short, in 1956 there were 2 recording sessions at Rudy Van Gelder's Hackensack studio and in New Jersey, and they were in forgive me, I'll just check my notes, October the 26th 1956. That was the last one. The first one was on May the 11th 1956, and this was with Miles's quintet, his first great quintet. I think this was be referred to as. We have Miles Davis on trumpet, John Coltrane on tenor sax, Red Garland on piano, Paul Chambers on bass, Philly Joe Jones on drums. Now, those 2 sessions resulted, as I say, in 4 albums. The first to be released was Cooking with the Miles Davis Quintet. That was in July '57. This was the second one, Relaxin with, in March '58. Then Working with, which again, I've left a link, but please, I'll put the link down in the description below as well. Please check that review out. Working with, that was January 1960, and then the final one was Steaming with, which was released in August 1961. But all of these were the same band, the same 2 sessions in 1956. There were, worth noting, there were, you'll notice my new t-shirt, or new old t-shirt. This is actually a 2012 t-shirt that I got from, I think it was H&M, which is kind of quite a budget, low-cost clothing brand shop, and I bought one of these back in 2012, and it wore out, and I've literally hunted the world down to find a new old stock one somewhere, and finally did, in Ukraine of all places, and it's just arrived. So I've got a new Miles Davis t-shirt, but yeah, the Modern Jazz Giants LP, actually half of that was with the same quintet, recorded the same sessions. The other half of the LP was with a previous quintet, which we recorded in '54, and Bag's Groove, for instance, is another album of that also came from that '54 session, which I will be getting onto doing a review about sometime soon. I'm actually going to do reviews of all of the 4 of these, in this series over the next month or 2. But anyway, so what's sparked this particular review and why I've been waiting? So this is the Analogue Productions reissue of this recording, and it was first done in 2013, this particular reissue. It was cut by Kevin Gray at Coherent from the original Analogue tapes, and it's pressed at QRP, which is Chad Kasem's own pressing plant, which is extremely high quality pressings in my book, literally #1. And it's got a little fly here, so it's, you know, it is a very, very, very nice copy that's been selling well for the 10 years that it's been on the market. Well, in fact, it's sold out, and it's the prices have been rocketing. I think it's reached, I think the most expensive was probably about $250, which is quite astonishing. And you know, so the fact that you know, they were doing another run of it, so it's you know, going back on the press, and retail price of $40 made it an absolute no-brainer. Now, second record I will be talking about, or the second copy of this, is this one. Now, I bought this probably about 3 or 4 months ago. It was actually issued last year, and this is on the Craft Records Small Batch Series label. Now, Craft Records are part of the Concord Media Group, who actually own basically Prestige. So, you know, this is kind of to Prestige what the Blue Note Tone Poets are to Blue Note, if you like. It's kind of an in-house, top-of-the-range production, and it's so, you know, this is still on the market, and it really does. You know, this is why I wanted to do this review, because the two are, you know, they're just begging to be compared, frankly. Well, as you can see, this is an incredibly fancy box. It's kind of a silk-covered hard box with a beautiful acrylic inset album cover there, Miles Davis Quintet, you can see here. It really is beautiful, and there's a little draw cord, or draw ribbon, and if I pull on that, out comes the record. Let's just take that out and put that away for now. Now, I know this is still in its shrink, but you can see there it's kind of a satin finish. It's very nice. It's good solid cardboard, this one, so as I say, this was initially released last year, 2022, and this one also is recorded, cut from the original Analogue tapes, this time by Bernie Grundman. So we got 2022 cut from the original Analogue tapes by Bernie Grundman, 2013 cut from the original Analogue tapes by Kevin Gray. Two of the leading mastering engineers in the world, without doubt, I would say. Pretty much going head to head here, so this is going to be very interesting. Now, there's more. What this particular Craft Recordings cut offers is, this is a one-step. You've heard me talk about the one-steps and the one-step process, I'm sure, before now, with you know, reference to all the MoFi one-steps. And it's a good story, and basically in normal LP production, you cut the lacquer. That lacquer is then plated, and from that you make a mold, which is the father, and then from the father you make a mold, which is the mother. From the mother you make a mold, which is the stamper, and then the stamper is used to press the record. So it's kind of 5 moulding stages, if you like. In the one-step process, instead of the father, mother, stamper, vinyl, you have a convert vinyl, if you see what I mean. So you cut out the mother and the stamper, or you cut out the father and the, you know, whichever way you want to argue it, but you cut out 2 stages of moulding or pressing, whichever way you want to describe the process. So the theory would be that the sound of a one-step is significantly closer to the sound of an acetate or a lacquer. in so being, it should be significantly closer to the sound of the master. So that's an interesting thing and a bit of a plus, I guess. And the other thing, like the MoFi one steps, I don't know if we can see through there. You see me through there? I don't know. But it is very translucent. Can't think what MoFi call this, but the technical name for it is Neotech VR900 vinyl. And I strongly suspect it's exactly the same as what the MoFis are pressed on, and it's pressed in the same place as the MoFis, which is RTI. So we've got a one-step, SuperVinyl RTI pressing, cut by Bernie Grundman. And let me just take this one out. And you've got a regular 5-step, or whatever you want to call it, pressed on regular vinyl, cut by Kevin Gray, and pressed at QRP. You'll notice they both come in nice inners. The QRP inner is, well, ironically, same as the ones MoFi supply. This all gets very confusing. And the Craft one step comes in these nice HDPE inners, which you can buy quite cheap in bulk. I typically use these as my standard go-to inners, frankly. So there we have it. That's the difference in the pressings. And I'll just pop these away now. Hang on, I'll probably cut this bit. So that's the difference in the pressings. And I'll just run through the inserts as well, what we get here. So with the Craft, we do get a very nice sheet of information here, and there's a great sort of bit of an essay here about the recording, Miles's quintets, and then we also got some beautiful pictures here of the original tapes. Wouldn't I like to have a listen to one of those? I really would. And even Rudy Van Gelder's original session notes there. That's really quite, I mean, that's supremely interesting and to me, very, very, very interesting. And then we've got the technical notes about, how Bernie cut this, all analog mastering, custom tube preamps, analog mixing consoles, etc. Scully lathe, etc., etc. Anyway, interesting stuff. Now, what I'm going to compare them to is this, which is my 1958 original. Now, it's not a first pressing. This is a 1958 repress. The way you can tell, if I just take this out, first of all, you can see that's, I'll come back to the covers, and nice original inner. The way you can tell this is a repress, rather than the actual very, very, very first original pressing, is around the perimeter of the label there. On the very, very first issues, it would have had, hang on, let me just check this, 446 was it? Where was it? Yeah, so the very first pressing issue had Prestige Records Incorporated, or Inc., 446 West 50th Street, NYC, and all the subsequent pressings, which I say this is a 1958 pressing, have the 203 South Washington Avenue, Bergenstock, New Jersey. So that's the way you tell first and second pressings apart. But if we look here in the, I don't know if you can see actually here, but in the dead wax we've got the RGV stamp. It's it's got the deep groove. It's I mean, this is actually, I don't know if you can see that, but that's actually a very, very nice, I'd say it's a VG plus easily. original pressing. So that's my reference. This is a record I've had for many years. If I wanted to buy one again in this condition now, it would cost me significantly more than it cost me when I bought it, and that's just the way of record collecting, it seems, at the moment. But a superb sounding record, and just for pure interest, this is the original inner sleeve, which you know, you can see advertising other things. It's got a little bit of a tear there, but never mind. Although maybe this is a later inner sleeve, because it's got working with, so it must be a later. Although maybe they just didn't, you know, they didn't sell out of this press for, who knows. Anyway, that's what we're using to compare. Now, before I get into talking about the sound of the different pressings, I just want to touch on the cover, because that's quite interesting. So, this is the original. Now, you can see here there's a sort of a texture, a sort of a, almost like a canvasy sort of painted texture across this yellow background. Kind of looks a little bit grubby in a way, but, you know, that's what it is. That's how it is. Now, if you look at the, and also if we take it out of the, I've got this in an inner sleeve. If I take it out of that, you can also see it's a pretty high gloss. It's a pretty high gloss cover. Pasted on back, but it's a pretty high gloss cover. Now, look at the Analogue Productions. Pasted on back, and high gloss cover, but very specifically, look at the yellow and that mottling. It's exactly the same. Whereas the Craft One Step small batch series, they've photoshopped or whatever, you know, but they've tidied up the image and to remove that mottling. Now the crazy thing is the mottling should be there, and in doing so, they've lost, you know, they've almost lost this section here. It's and they've lost the differentiation between these two greys, if you like. So nice though it is, it's far less authentic. And also, of course, they've here Prestige CR00227, and this is the Analogue Productions Prestige 7129, and the original Prestige 7129. So the Analogue Productions is a much more faithful representation of the original. Now, let's get down to the sound between these two, okay? So, this was one kind of in-depth test, I must say. You'll have probably seen my hi-fi system story video, which I'll put a link to up here. If you haven't and you're interested, please do have a look. And I just want to say that my regular phonostage and cartridge, well, the cartridge is a Miyajima Kansui, which is a, you know, very nice old school moving coil cartridge with a Shibata stylus, which is a long contact patch stylus, and I also have a separate Miyajima Zero mono cartridge, and all of these records are mono. They were only recorded in mono, I need to say that. But for the last few months I have been borrowing a DS Audio DS Grandmaster optical cartridge and equalizer, which is, you know, a very, very, very high-end setup. Basically that's gone back now, but my listening on these coincided with the period where that went back. So I actually listened to all three records on the DS Audio Grandmaster, and then I listened to all three records on the Miyajima Kansui, and then I listened to the original on the Miyajima Zero Mono, which has a 1mm stylus. So is appropriate for this record, but it's not appropriate for these, because a modern LP groove is not the same size as a 1950s LP groove. Okay, so that was well, a lot of listening, an awful lot of listening, and I've just made pages and pages and pages and pages and pages of notes. But there is a real kind of trend and a real theme and a real conclusion that we can come to. So I'll explain the where are we? I'll explain the Craft Records one first of all. So again, this is, as I said, this is Bernie Grundman. Now with this, the lead instruments basically are typically you've got Miles or Coltrane. There's very, very few times where they're playing together in harmony. It's much more like a kind of a conversation. Miles will play a kind of a lead line, he'll stop, Coltrane will come in, and similarly Red Garland will come in and sort of do a piano kind of solo as well, if you like. When I say solo, you've almost invariably got the drums and the bass in the background. And also kind of I think it's relevant is a lot of the drumming is very, very, very subtle in the background, and much of it is actual cymbal work, and it's just sort of this sort of like very, very, very quiet, and it's I kind of liken it to the sound of the sea when you're at a beach, and the sea just sort of washes up, very, very gentle waves, just washing up, and just sort of tickling the pebbles or shells, and this really gentle sound, and that's really the extent of the drumming. A lot of the time, there are there's a couple of drum solos, and there's a few kind of really kind of hard sort of cracks and little grooves and melodies, if you like, on the drums, and certainly times where the drums join in much more, but on many of the tracks, the only kind of thing that Philly Joe Jones is doing is this sort of just tickling the cymbals almost. Now, the Craft Records, the one step, Miles is definitely louder than he is on either the Analogue Productions or the original. Coltrane on all three seems to be recorded quite forward, it has to be said. But with Miles's increased sort of presence on the Craft Records, and I think how they've done that, because they haven't gone back to a multi-track, they've only got the stereo master. So I think it's basically EQing. I think they've also brought up those cymbals on Philly Joe Jones's drumming. And in comparison with the other two, to my taste, it becomes a little bit too much. And interesting enough, I mentioned the two systems that I've used this with the two cartridges, much more so on the DS than the Miyajima. But there's also a situation where it's really taxing the tracking of the cartridge. The Miles's solos are pushed forward to a point where they sort of squeak and squawk and really sound a bit unpleasant to my ears. And that's really my kind of overall reading of this one, if you like. It's still a great sounding record, but if it has a trait, a character, a signature, it's that the lead instrument at any one time who's playing that lead is thrust forward, and I think thrust forward slightly too much, and to the point where it actually starts to break up or cause mistracking or unhappiness in the groove, so to speak. And that's my general feeling on the Craft. Whereas on the Analogue Productions, you can really align that more with the original, in so much as when these, when the band is playing, I mean, there are times when the bass is quite quiet, the piano is quite quiet, and the drums are quite quiet, but there's still an evenness to the performance. It's, I mean, you know, dare I say it, I could well imagine that someone would prefer the Analogue Productions reissue, the Kevin Gray cut, to the original. Even with the original played on the mono, the Miyajima mono cartridge. The Miyajima mono playing this at its best probably has a little more, when Miles is playing the trumpet, you get the note, but also you've got the breathing noises, the taking of the breaths, and the silences. You know, you might have stopped blowing the note, but it's when he takes his fingers off the what do you call it, the valves. I was going to say the keys, the valves, keys. You know what I mean? All that almost inaudible kind of intuitive stuff about how someone's playing and the expression and the feeling. You know, when he starts blowing and then really kind of blows hard, that sort of stuff. That's exceptional on the original, but you know, it's a. I mean, this is a 58 issue. Maths is, you know, it's 60 odd years old, 70 or 60 something years old. It's an old record, and this is a brand new record, and one that was cut by a bloody genius, frankly, Kevin Gray, a good few years ago, and it's exquisitely pressed. I'll probably keep the original just because it's, you know, it's an artifact of whatever, but time will tell which one I actually go back to and play. But it might well be this, because it's got 95% of that expression of the original. But there's no question, you know, with the advances in sort of cutting technology and everything else, that the bass, the drums, and the piano are clearer than on the original. You know, I'm sure if I could get hold of that original master tape and play it, it would sound better than both. Obviously, you'd expect that. But I think that this has actually captured it extremely well. So, you know, in conclusion to that, I've got to say, you know, hunt yourself down an original if you want it as a beautiful. Let me take this out of the colour so you can just see the thing properly. You know, it's a nice original. There's a little bit of light fading down the edge there, as you can see. But it's a very nice cover. And it's its inner sleeve, which has got a bit of a tear, but nice inner sleeve. So I can't swear this is the one that actually came with it, because it has got some later releases indicated here, and from the serial, the matrix numbers, this is a 58 pressing, but you know, we've got working with listed there. So it's an old inner sleeve and a beautiful deep groove, great condition, phenomenal sounding record. But that's going to cost you $150, $200, maybe more, really don't know. And we've got the Craft, which, you know, comes with a lovely insert sheet. It comes in its extremely fancy box, which, you know, it's we have these discussions about UHQRs and MoFi one steps and all the packaging and the extra boxes, and you know, yeah, they're fancy. Some people like that kind of thing, some people don't. I'm not quite sure where I stand on that, to be honest, but there's no question it's about what the record sounds like inside. That's the thing that really matters. Okay, so the Craft is still available, and I think it cost me $110, obviously, plus shipping and taxes and all the rest of it. So, you know, quite an expensive record. And then we've got the Analogue Productions, which is a retail price of $40. So again, with, you know, shipping and taxes, don't know, maybe it cost me about 50 quid, 50 pounds, something like that. But in terms of, you know, how it sounds compared with the other two, it's an absolute no-brainer. This one is just fantastic. And you know, if you've already got it, because it has been on the market for, this is a repress, remember, it was first issued well, 10 years ago. If you've already got one, you're lucky. If you haven't, now's the time to pick one up, because as I say, they've been going for up to 250 quid in the meantime. So this is an absolute stunning record. It's possibly my favourite of these four. It's very hard to pick a favourite from these four. It's definitely my favourite era of Miles, that sort of mid 50s to early 60s. Absolutely my favourite period of Miles. And, you know, frankly, you could get every single album in that era and you wouldn't be, you know, I don't think you'd regret it. But for, you know, if you're in the US, $40, this is stunning. Absolutely stunning. 100% recommended. No question whatsoever. Go out and buy it. And thank you, Chad. Thank you, Analogue Productions. And well done. Thank you, Miles, for the music. On that note, I'll say cheerio. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please click the like button, subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Cheers. Bye.